Yeah, boy, it's your boy, Stingray Cool, the Stinger in the house. We talk about the OGs, Temptations. Without them, there would never be no Neo, no Usher, no Michael Jackson, no James Brown, no Chris Brown. Wouldn't have been none of these guys if it was for these OGs. You know, Neo done gave him props. A lot of people done gave him props, boy. You know, first off, we got the still live. God bless him, still living legend. I like first like thank you God for giving the gift and the wisdom to drop knowledge on y'all, to drop knowledge on these people, to entertain these people, and to get them good, positive, happy content and positive black content. Much love, peace to everyone. We got still living Otis Williams. Let's give him his props while he's alive. He's still moving. He may be in his 80s, but he's moving. He may be in his 80s, but he's still moving like he's 17. aka Big Daddy, the king of swag. His swagger never went away. He's the last living member of the Temptations. He's a good drawer too. Then got no recipes. Dennis Edwards, who passed away 2 years ago, who sung vocals for when the late David Ruffin left. And then got David Ruffin, Paul Williams, Ollie Woodson, Otis Williams, Eddie Kendricks. Eddie Kendricks, the reason why Kendrick Lamar had his birth name, because like years ago in 2012, when Kendrick Lamar was on the Arsenio Hall show, when he was talking about how his mama named him like after after Eddie Kendricks, Kendrick Lamar, Eddie Kendricks, two both legends. The legendary Eddie Kendricks and the legendary Kendrick Lamar. Let's go with a little history of the Temptations. The Temptations is an American vocal group from Detroit, Michigan. Detroit in the house. Much love to Detroit people. A released series of successful singles, albums on Motown Records during the 1960s and 1970s. The group's work with producers Norman Whitefield, God bless Norman, beginning with the top 10 hit singles, Cloud Nine, and God bless Cloud Nine. It began the top in October 1968, pioneered psychedelic soul and was significant in the evolution of R&B and soul music. The band members are known for their choreography, distinct harmonies, and dress style, having sold tens of millions of albums. The Temptations are among the most successful groups in popular music. Of course, the five originals: David Ruffin, Melvin Franklin, Otis Williams, Eddie Kendricks, and Paul Williams. Also known as Elgins and the Pirates. That's the earlier names before they became the Temptations. Go watch the Temptations movie. You know, you will see where it all came from. The origins of Detroit, Michigan, USA. They genres R&B, soul, and funk, and psychedelic soul. Years after 1960 to present, labels Warwick, Miracle, Motown, Atlantic, New Door. Associated acts: The Supremes, Smokey Robinson, Norman Whitfield. Four Tops, The Temptations, course. Review features Dennis Edwards, Kyle Mack. Members. The recent members are Otis Williams, Ron Tyson, Terry Weeks, Willie Green, and Tony Grant. The past members are Melvin Franklin, Eddie Kendricks, Paul Williams, Albert Al Bryant. Al was the very first one. David Ruffin, Dennis Edwards, Ricky Owens, Richard Street, Damon Harris, Glenn Leonard, Louis Price, Ali Woodson, Theo Peoples, Ray Davis, Harry McGilberry, Barrington Bo Henderson, G.C. Cameron, Joe Herndon, Bruce Williamson, Larry Braggs, Mario Cabino. Featuring five male vocalists and dancers, save for brief periods with fewer or more members. The group formed in 1960 in Detroit under the name The Elgins. The founding members came from two rival Detroit vocal groups, Otis Williams, Albert Al Bryant, and Melvin Franklin of Otis Williams in the Distance, and Eddie Kendricks and Paul Williams of the Primes in 1964. Bryant was replaced by David Ruffin, who was the lead vocalist on a number of the group's biggest hits, including My Girl, 1964, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, 1966. What up, what up? GIA? Cool. What up, what up? Drop some of this knowledge on y'all. Showing y'all black excellence. We gotta pass this on, keep knowing our history, so we can know the past to make it to the future. Okay, let me see. Okay, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, 1966. I Wish It Would Rain, 1967. Ruffin was replaced in 1968 by Dennis Edwards, with whom the group continued to record hit records such as Cloud 9, 1968, I Can't Get Next to You, 1969, and Ball of Confusion, That's What the World Is Today, 1970. The group's lineup has changed frequently since the departures of Kendricks and Paul Williams from the act in 1971. Later members of the groups have included singers such as Richard Street, when they were friends, Damon Harris, Ron Tyson, and Ali Olu Woodson, in whom the group scored a late period of hits in 1984 with Treat Her Like a Lady, and in 1987 with theme song for the children's movement program Kids in Motion. Over the course of their career, the Temptations released the four Billboard Hot 100 number one singles and 14 R&B number one singles. Their music has earned 3 Grammy Awards. The Temptations were the first Motown recording act to win a Grammy Award for Cloud 9 in 1969. In the 2010 and 2013, received a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Six of the Temptations, Edwards, Franklin, Kendricks, Ruffin, Otis Williams, and Paul Williams, were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1989. Three classic Temptation songs: My Girl, Just My Imagination, Run Away With Me, and Papa Was a Rolling Stone are among the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. The Temptations were ranked at number 68 on the Rolling Stones magazine list of the 100 greatest artists of all times. As the 2021, the Temptations continued to perform with founding Otis Williams in the lineup. Williams owned the rights to the Temptations names. That's why it's good on the rights to your stuff. I don't care if it's YouTube, rapping, music, entertainment, anime, and comic books. Own your rights. Now we're gonna go into history. Kendrick, Eddie Kendricks and Paul Williams started singing together in the church as children. By their teenage years, they formed the Doo-Wop Quartet in 1955 with Kel Osborne and Wally Waller, named themselves the Cavaliers. See, after Walters left the group in 1957, the remaining trio left Birmingham to break into the music business. The group settled in Detroit, where they changed their names to the Primes under the direction of Milton Jenkins. The Primes soon became well known around the Detroit area for their meticulous performance. And Jenkins later created a sister group, the Primettes, later known as the Supremes. Diana Ross and all them. True that, true, real talent, baby. Shoot, we gotta give glory to all these heroes. No, I'm gonna do this on my channel. I'm giving props to all our black heroes. I want y'all to know, spread the word to all these people and let this generation know where our heroes came from, so they would know where to go. Yep, yep. See, Kendrick was already seen as a maintaining idol in the Detroit area, while Williams was well received for his baritone vocals. Meanwhile, currently Texas teenager Otis Williams moved to Detroit as a youngster to be with his mother. By 1958, Williams was the leader of the vocal group named Otis Williams and the Siberians. The group included Elbert Al Bryant, James Pee Wee Crawford, Bernard Plain, and Arthur Walton. The group recorded a song, Pecos Kid, for a label run by radio DJ Senator Burchell Bryant. Shortly after its release, the group changed its name to the El Domingos. Subsequently, Montgomery native Melvin Franklin replaced Arthur Walton as bass vocalist, and Detroit-born Richard Street, claimed by Melvin Franklin to be his cousin, replaced Bernard Plain as lead singer, signing with Johnny May Matthews Northern Records. The group had their name changed again to The Distance The group recorded two northern singles, including Come On 1959 and Alright 1960. Between these releases, Albert Mooch Harrell replaced Pee Wee Crawford. Come On became a local hit, and the Warwick Records label picked the record up and for national distribution. Following the release of Alright, Matthews appointed Williams the group leader, and group's name was changed to Otis Williams and the Distance. During this period, both the Primes and Distance were influenced by other vocal groups, including the Miracles, other inspirations including Cadillacs, Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, the Drifters, and the Isley Brothers. Love the Isleys. Do Come On was a local hit in the Detroit area. The Distance never saw much record sales, and Alright was not as successful as receiving an offer from Berry Gordy to sign with Motown Records. See, okay. The Distance got out of their contract with Northern Records. However, Mooch, Harold, and Richard Street shortly departed from the group, and the remaining members lost use of the Distance names. Richard Street later formed another Distant group who recorded the Thelma label in the early 1960s. In the early years, members of the Distance were acquainted with the Primes, or both groups participated in the same talent show and performed at the same public venues. Friendly rivals, the Primes were considered to be the more polished and vocal stronger group of the two. However, the Primes disbanded in 1960 after Kells Osbourne moved to California. Eddie Kendricks and Paul Williams returned to Alabama following the band's dissolution while visiting relatives in Detroit. Kendricks called Otis Williams, who desperately needed two more members for audition for Gordy's label, and offered Kendricks a lead singer place in his new group, which would also include former Distant members Franklin and Bryant. Kendricks agreed on the condition he bring Paul Williams with him. Otis Williams happily agreed, and Kendricks and Paul Williams moved back to Detroit to join the new group. This is awesome. The original name of the new lineup of Otis Williams, Melvin Franklin, Albridge, Elbridge, Al Bryant, Eddie Kendricks, and Paul Williams was the Elgins. Under the name, the group auditioned for Motown in March 1961. Already impressed with some of the members after hearing session works, Berry Gordy agreed to sign the group to the Motown imprint Miracle. However, before signing, Gordy discovered another group was using the name of Elgins. The group began tossing about ideas for a new name on the steps of the Hitsville, USA studio on a suggestion from Miracle Records employee Billy Mitchell. Songwriter Mickey Stevenson, the group members Otis Williams and Paul Williams, the Temptations became the group's new moniker. The Elgins name resurfaced at Motown in 1965 when Gordy renamed a quarter called the Downbeats as the Elgins. Temptations' first two singles, "Oh Mother of Mine" and "Check Yourself" with Paul Williams on lead, was released on Miracle before Gordy closed the label down and re-signed the band to his latest imprint, Gordy Records. On the Gordy imprint, Eddie Kendricks sang lead on the Temptations' first charted single, "You're My Dream Come True," which peaked at number 22 on the R&B chart in 1962. Later that year, the Temptations began touring as part of the Motown Revue. The group issued 8 recordings between 1961 and 1963 without much success. Paul Williams and Eddie Kendricks split the leads during the early period, with Al Bryant, Otis Williams, and Melvin Franklin occasionally singing lead. As they did on a song titled "Isn't She Pretty" for a brief time, the group almost had their name changed to the Pirates. Almost had to, yeah, and recorded the songs "Mind Over Matter" and "Little Love Till I Die" under the name. Eventually, the label and the group decided again against it. One hit song, "Do You Love Me," mhm, was originally to be recorded by the Temptations. When he couldn't get a hold of the group, Gordy produced a version for the Contours in 1963. The Temptations began working with Smokey Robinson as producer and writer. Robinson first worked with the group was the Paul Williams led I Want a Love I Can See. While the song fell to the chart It did eventually become a popular live performance spot for the group, and particularly for Paul Williams in general. Some called the group the Headless Temptations due to their lack of hits. During the time, David Ruffin began following the group around as he aspired to join them. During a local Detroit performance, Ruffin joined the group on stage and impressed the group with his talent, with his vocal and talent dance, with his vocal talent and dancing skills. Following the same time, Al Bryant had grown frustrated with the group's lack of success and became restless and uncooperative, preferring to maintain routine of his day job as a milkman over the rigors of altercation on stage at a Christmas performance. Following the incident where he struck Paul with a beer bottle during a heated quarrel at an earlier gig in the middle of the year, Bryant was summarily fired from the group. As a result, David Ruffin was brought in as his replacement in January 1964. Mhm. Through Ruffin's brother Jimmy, who was also considered for the slot, David was selected following his performance with them in 1963. Bryant continued to perform in a number of other local groups and died at the age of 36 in Flagler County, Florida, of liver cirrhosis on October 26, 1975. The Classic Five era. The Temptations then consisted of Otis Williams, Melvin Franklin, Paul Williams, Eddie Kendricks, and David Ruffin. The success that followed the group resulted in what would later years what would in later years be frequently referred to as the Classic Five lineup. In January 1964, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles bandmate Bobby Rogers co-wrote and produced "The Way You Do the Things You Do," with Eddie Kendricks on the lead, and singles became the Temptations' first top 20 hit that April. That's what I'm talking about. Shortly afterwards, "The Way You Do the Things You Do" and several pre-David Ruffin singles were supplied into the group's first album, Meet the Temptations. Released in early 1964, the next two Temptation singles in 1964, "Girl, Why You Wanna Make Me Blue," along with "I'll Be in Trouble," and its B-side, "The Girl's Alright With Me," all featured Kendricks on lead, although Franklin sang one line in "I'll Be in Trouble." However, producer Smokey Robinson saw potential in the mellow yet gruff voice of David Ruffin and thought that if he could write the perfect song for his lead, then the group could have a top 10 hit. While traveling as a part of Motown's Motown Revue later that year, Robinson and fellow Miracles member Ronnie White wrote "My Girl," which the Temptations recorded in the fall of 1964, with Ruffin singing his first lead vocal for the group. Released as a single on December 21st, 1964, the song became the Temptations' first number one pop hit in March 1965. Over 50 years and multiple chart topping songs later, it's still their signature song to this day. As success of "My Girl," Ruffin sang lead on the next three singles, "It's Growing," "Since I Lost My Baby," and "My Baby," which all made it to top 20 in 1965. The B-side to "My Baby," "Don't Look Back," featured a stirring lead from Paul Williams and was a sleeper hit in R&B charts and standard for vocal group playlists. Norman Whitfield had requested the opportunity to write for the group in 1966. Berry Gordy promised him that if Robson's "Get Ready" with Eddie Kendricks on lead failed to chart in the top 20, Whitfield would be allowed to produce the next song. "Get Ready" subsequently missed its mark, and Gordy issued the Whitfield produced "Ain't Too Proud to Beg," with David Ruffin on lead as the next single. "Ain't Too Proud to Beg" outperformed "Get Ready" on the Billboard charts, and Whitfield became the Temptations' new main producer. He began pulling the group away from the ballad based production expose by Robson towards a harder edge and brass heavy soul sound reminiscent of James Brown. That's what I'm talking about. Nearly all singles Whitfield produced prior to 1968 featured David Ruffin on lead, including R&B number one, pop top 10 hits, Beauty is Only Skin Deep, I Know I'm Losing You, and early 1967 hit Loneliness Made Me Realize It's You That I Need. Other important singles from the period included All I Need, produced by Frank Wilson and Whitfield Protege, and the You're My Everything, on which Kendrick and Ruffin shared lead studio albums during the Classic Five period apart. From Meet the Temptations included Temptations Sang Smokey, 1965, The Tempting Temptations, 1965, Getting Ready, 1966, The Temptations with a Lot of Soul, 1967, The Temptations Wish It Would Rain, 1968. During this, various songwriting partners of Norman Whitfield included Roger Pensby, Edward Holland Jr., and Temptations roadshow manager and guitarist Cornelius Grant. Subsequently, Barrett Strong, who sang the very first hit in Motown in 1959, "Money That's What I Want," began working with Whitfield and Pisbean on Temptations material after Eddie Holland left Motown with the rest of the Holland songwriter production team in 1967. Two of the Whitfield Strong Pisbean collabs, "I Wish It Would Rain" and "I Could Never Love Another After Loving You," became hits in early 1968 after the suicide of Roger Pensby in December 1967. Subsequently, Barrett Strong became the sole collaborator on Norman Whitfield. From early 1964 to mid 1968, the Temptations went from unknown hopefuls to international stars as a result appeared frequently on television shows such as American Bandstand, The Ed Sullivan Show, and The Hollywood Palace. At the same time, the group began to achieve crossover success, catering to Middle America with a pop standards album, The Temptations and a Mellow Mood, 1967, the success of which resulted in performances at the famous Copacabana in New York City, along with dates at other similar superclubs. Outside of music, the Temptations were made honorary members of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. Now we're about to go into, yeah, Dave Ruffin was that man, boy. Now we're about to go into the departure of Dave Ruffin and the arrival of Dennis Edwards. David Ruffin's departure and Dennis Edwards' arrival. In 1967, David Ruffin had begun demanding special treatment as a lead singer, riding to and from gigs in the private Mink Line limousine, and his then girlfriend Motown singer Tammy Terrell instead of the group limousine used by the other four Temptations. The other members slowly became irritated and annoyed by Ruffin's behavior. Following Motown's decision to rechristen the Supremes and as Diana Ross in the Supremes, Marty in the Vandellas, and Martha Reeves in the Vandellas, Ruffin felt entitled to the same treatment and demanded that his group be renamed as well, David Ruffin and the Temptations. Ruffin was also causing friction with Berry Gordy and by demanding an accounting of the group's earnings. Motown partially acquired by allowing the Temptations to retain an outside accounting firm, but the firm did not have full access to the books from the Temptations manager International Talent Management Inc. Subsequently of Motown. Some of this behavior was attributed to the fact that by this time Ruffin had begun using cocaine, regularly building further tension within the group, causing him to miss a number of groups' meetings, rehearsals, and concerts. There was conscience among the rest of the group. Ruffin needed to be replaced when Ruffin missed the June 1968 engagement at the Cleveland Supper Club in order to attend the show by his new girlfriend, Barbara Gail Martin, daughter of Dean Martin. The group decided that he had crossed the line, and other four Temptations drew up legal documentation officially firing Ruffin on June June 27, 1968. The next day, Dennis Edwards, a singer formerly of the Contours that Eddie Kendricks and Otis Williams already had pegged as a potential Ruffin replacement, was hired to take Ruffin's place. Edwards and Ruffin was good friends, and at first Ruffin went along with the changing of the guard and it carries Edwards. However, at Edwards' official debut with the Temptations in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania on July 7th, Ruffin came to the show and jumped on stage, taking a microphone from Edwards, singing lead Ain't Too Proud to Beg, and disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. Ruffin reported this stunt several times throughout the group's July tour run. Despite the group hiring extra security to keep Ruffin out, he continued to find ways to sneak into the venue and jump on stage when the group performed one of the songs he had once sung lead. In the story recounted several times by Dennis Edwards, rebutted by Otis Williams and Temptations road manager Don Foster, at several of these stunts, the positive audience reaction and remorseful Ruff is pleased to be let back in the act convinced the other Temptations to do so. Otis, Otis Williams informed the then still new Edwards that the group would lay him off and rehire Ruffin while Gatlinburg, Maryland. However, when Ruffin failed to show up the next night in his return engagement, the group kept Edwards on and ceased to entertain the prospect of rehiring Ruffin. After Gaithersburg, Ruffin stopped attempting to disrupt the Temptations concerts and instead turned his attention to Motown office back in Detroit. He sued Motown in October 1968, seeking a release from the label, but Motown counter-used to keep the single from leaving and case was eventually settled in court. The settlement required Ruffin to remain with Motown as a solo artist to finish out his contract. Edwards' first album with the Temptations was Live at the Copa, recorded at the group's return to the Copacabana nightclub. The Temptations debuted the first number of collaborations with Diana Ross and the Supremes. In 1968, the results included two studio albums. 1968's Diana Ross and the Supremes joined the Temptations, which featured Edwards' first studio recording with the group, and number two hit single I'm Gonna Make You Love Me. And together, there was also a joint tour to NBC television specials. TCB aired December 9th, 1968, and GIT on Broadway aired November 12th, 1969, The Psychedelic Soul. Additions of Edwards to the Temptations coincided with the adoption of a new sound for the group by producer Norman Whitfield, and in the fall of 1968, Whitfield began producing psychedelic-based material for the Temptations, derived primarily from the sound of funk bands Sly and the Family Stone and Funkadelic. This new style, which debuted with the top 10 hit single Cloud 9 in October 1968, was a marked departure from the David Ruffin era ballads and instruments. And the instrumentals was funkier, the beat was the beat was hard driven, and all five attempts traded lead vocals similar to Sly and the Family Stone. Cloud Nine, the centerpiece of the group's landmark Cloud Nine LP, was a top 10 hit. Won Motown its first Grammy Awards for Best R&B Vocal Group Performance in 1969. The blend of the Motown sound and psychedelic rock sound resulted in a new sub subgenre of music called psychedelic soul, also evident in the work of Diana Ross and the Springs, Reflections, and Love Child, Marvin Gaye's version of I Heard It Through the Grapevine, and music of the Fifth Dimension, The Undisputed Truth, and the Friends of Distinction. More Temptation psychedelic soul singles followed in 1969 and 1970. Among the Runaway Child, Runner Wild, a number one R&B hit, I Can't Get Next to You, a number one pop hit, Psychedelic Shack, and Ball of Confusion, That's What the World Is Today. But the formula began to wear thin when Eugenia Zai, Ellie Wingle Unite the World only went number 33 pop in the fall of 1970. The group's other important albums from this period include Puzzle People 1969, Psychedelic Shack 1970. Psychedelic Shack includes the original version of War, later made famous by Edwin Starr. The World Against Eddie Kennedy Powers. Paul Williams, who suffered from sickle cell disease, fell into depression because of the stress of touring and personal issues. By the late 1960s, he had developed a serious case of alcoholism, having never previously consumed anything stronger than milk. He began to drink quite heavily and was hard to take, according to Otis Williams, as his physical and mental health began to decline. Shortly after that made performing increasingly difficult, Williams began traveling with oxygen tanks and other four temptations made valiant efforts to raid and drain his alcohol stash, stashes. Late 1969, Richard Street, lead singer of Motown act The Monitors, a former distance, was hired by Otis Williams to tour with the group as a backup replacement for Williams. For the most shows, save for his solo numbers, Williams danced and lip sync on stage to part sung live by Street into an outstage mic behind a curtain. At other shows during the most second half of 1970, Street's substitute for Williams on stage when he was too sick to go on. Eddie Kendricks became detached from the group after David Ruffin's firing, and as the health of Paul Williams continued to fall, he regularly picked fights with Otis Williams and Melvin Franklin, which often became violent. In addition, he preferred the ballad materials from the earlier days and was uncomfortable with the psychedelic soul material. The group was now performing. Kendricks rekindled his friendship with Ruffin, who pursued him to go solo. He no longer felt he had the say in Otis Williams' handling of the group and was also convinced Motown's handling of the Temptations' finances was cheating the group out of money. Kendricks, being the only member to continue an alliance with Ruffin, also repeatedly suggested Ruffin should be allowed back into the group despite the other members' long, strong objections. Yep, yep. Kendricks lobbied strongly in 1970 to have the Temptations go on strike. No performances, no recordings until Berry Gordy and the Motown staff were willing to go over all group finances with independent accountants. Otis Williams and Franklin strongly opposed this idea, and regular group and fighting between Kendricks, Otis Williams, and Franklin grew from the disagreement after a November 1970 Copacabana engagement. Conf- a final confrontation between the three caused Kendricks to walk out in between shows and not return. Both Kendricks and Williams then agreed that Kendricks would be leaving the group. Kendricks later stated that he actually considered leaving as early as 1965, but remained with the Temptations and successfully attempted to get permission to record a solo album without leaving the group. Before Kendricks officially left the group, Temptations, he and Paul Williams recorded the lead vocals for Just My Imagination, Run Away With Me, a ballad that became Kendrick's final single with the group, including the Sky's the Limit LP, along with the original album version of Smiling Faces, Sometimes Just My Imagination, was released as a single January 1971, and the song began steadily climbing the U.S. pop singles chart, peaking at number one 2 months later. By the time Just My Imagination topped the charts, Kendrick had negotiated his release from the group and signed a solo deal with Motown's Tamela label. The Temptations originally hired Ricky Owens from the Los Angeles-based vocal group The Vibrations to replace Kendrick. However, Owens only played 2 dates with the group before he was fired for forgetting the words to his solo numbers. Due to the nervousness from several weeks in spring of 1971, the Temptations were without a fifth member. Owens, meanwhile, returned to the Vibrations and died in Los Angeles, California on December 6, 1996, at the age of 57. Whitfield took a remaining Temptations quit and recorded to some B-side Ball of Confusion, that's what the word is today, as a replacement single. Smiling Faces sometimes was released as a single for The Undisputed Truth, instead of becoming the top 5 hits on the Billboard's Hot 100 in 1971. Meanwhile, the summer peaked at number 51, Billboard's Hot 100, making it the first Temptation single to miss the top 40 since Farewell My Love 8 years later. 8 years earlier. As his doctor declared 3 weeks later, he was unstable to caffeine for medical reasons. Paul quit the Temptations in May. Richard Street, basically, no, the doctor said he can't make it no more because the alcohol. What up, L. Nixon? Just dropping knowledge about the Temptations. Yep, telling the story of the Temptations. See who else we got. All right, so Paul Williams, he quit the Temptations in May. Richard Street officially took Williams' place. Although Williams continued to be paid for customary one-fifth of the group revenue, Street was paid on salary for the first 18 months of his tenure and worked when he could with the group as an advisor and choreographer. After Williams had recovered enough to record again, he recorded Two Sides in 1973 for a debut solo single. However, on August 17th, 1973, Williams died in Detroit at the age of 34 from a gunshot wound. His death was considered by the Wayne County coroner. Okay, now the early 1970s and the funk years. In May 1971, the Temptations finally found a permanent replacement for the first tenure position for 20-year-old Baltimore native Damon Harris. Otis Williams, Edwards, Franklin, Street, and Harris continued recording and performing on Norman Winfield, continued producing hits from them. Their top four hits, such as Superstar, Remember How You Get Where You Are, 1971, A Message from the Temptations to David Ruffin, Eddie Kendricks, and Take a Look Around 1972. During this period, the group toured with Quiet Quiet Elegance as their backup singers. Quiet Elegance featured Lois Reeves and the sister of Martha Reeves. Lois Reeves, the sister of Martha Reeves, alongside Frankie Gehry and Millie Vanilli Scott. Yep, yep. Let's see. In 1972, saw the release of Papa Was a Rolling Stone, a magnum opus written by Norman Whitfield and Barrett Strong, produced by Whitfield. Originally a 3-minute record written and produced for the Undisputed Truth, Whitfield took the sober tune and created a sprawling, dramatic 12-minute version of The Temptations, a forerunner of the extended single, soon to become a popular in clubs and discotheques. An edited 7-minute version was released as a single and became one of the longest hit singles in music history. It hit number one on the pop charts and number five on the R&B charts. In 1973, Papa Was a Rolling Stone won the Temptations their second Grammy for the Best R&B Performance by a Group. Whitfield arranged Concerta Paul Reiser won the award for Best R&B Instrumental Performance for the instrumental version on the B-side, and Whitfield and Barrett Strong won the songwriting Grammy for Best R&B Song. After Papa Was a Rolling Stone, Whitfield stopped working with Barrett Strong and began writing the Temptations material on his own. The success of Papa led Whitfield to own the success of Papa. Yeah, to create more elongated operatic pieces, including the top 10 hit masterpiece 1973, and several of the tracks on the resulting masterpiece album. Tensions developed between Whitfield and the group, who found Whitfield arranged and difficult to work with, citing his habitual tardiness, his emphasis of the instrumental tracks at the expense of their vocals on many of his productions, and the decline of singles and album sales as other sources of conflicts. The group, the group sought to change producers. Otis Williams complained about Whitfield's acts, and the Temptations stagnated sales to Berry Gordy. As a result, the group was reassigned Jeffrey Bowen, co-producer of the 1967 In the Mellow Mood album. The final Norman Whitfield production album 1990 was released in December 1973 and included the top 30 single hit Let Your Hair Down. Shortly afterwards, Whitfield left Motown in 1975, established Whitfield Records, taking Undisputed Truth and Willie Hutch with him, along with Rose Royce, who performed an instrumental track for Let Your Hair Down before recording their 1976 Mass Car Wash. See, a little bit of dark contemporary. Bowen's first LP with the Temptations was January 1975, A Song for You, which included the cover of the titular Leon Russell tune popularized with soul audience by Donny Hathaway, along with the pop top 40 R&B number, the hit "Happy People" featuring the Commodores as the as instrumentals, and "Shaky Ground" featuring instrumentation by Parliament Funkadelics Eddie Hazel, along with Billy Bass, Nelson, Glasshouse. The group final top 40 hit was also included. Damon Harris was fired from the group during the recording of a song for you as his behavior and work ethic was deemed unprofessional, and his replacement was Washington, D.C. native Glenn Leonard, formerly of the Unifix. And of course, they had different producers: Bowen, Holland, James Anthony, Cameron Michael, and the Temptations themselves tried producing hits from the Dance Street LPs: House Party, November 1975, Wings of Love, March 1975, The Temptations Do the Temptation, August 1976. So they returned to Motown, years later. Upon the return to Motown, several lineup changes occurred. Louis Price departed from the group and joined the Drifters. Dennis Edwards, who had made an unsuccessful attempt at developing a solo career during his 3-year exit from the group, returned to the lineup. Berry Gordy co-wrote and produced "Power," the Temptations' first single under the new contract. "Power" from the album of the same name hit number 11 on the R&B charts, but failed to chart top in the top 40. 2 years of underperformed singles albums followed, including infamous album with Philadelphia-based producer Tom Bell. Eddie Kendricks and David Ruffin agreed to rejoin the group for the new album, aptly titled "Reunion." In this subsequent promotion tour, Rick James, the Motown funk star who had previously used the Temptations as backup vocalist on his 1981 hit "Super Freak," and whom Franklin claimed as his nephew, wrote, produced, and guest on the Reunion album. Lead single "We're Standing on the Top." The single went to number 6 on the R&B charts and featured Ruffin, Kendricks, and Edwards trading back and forth on lead. Also, while the unsung reunion tour with all 7 Temptations, Ruffin, Kendricks, Otis Williams, Franklin, Edwards, Richard Street, and Glenn Leonard was financially successful, it ended up being a stressful venture. Kendrick's voice had weakened after decades of chain smoking. Ruffin, still addicted to drugs, missed a number of the performances due to the being incapacitated, and current group members Dennis Edwards and Glenn Leonard were causing problems. At the conclusion of the reunion tour, Ruffin and Kendricks was dismissed, and they began touring and performing together as a duo. One more album, Surface Thrills, released in 1983, featured a sharp departure in the group sound by incorporating elements of the current rock. Following its release, Glenn Leonard was let go and replaced by Ron Tyson, who was with the Philadelphia groups The Ethnics and Love Commit Me. Tyson had been a staff songwriter at Atlantic during the Temptations' tenure at the label and co-wrote several songs on the album Here to Tempt You. All right, from the 1980s to the 1990s. By the time the Temptations' release were no longer performed well on the pop charts, due some singles still made the R&B top 20. "Love on My Mind Tonight," a single from Surface Thrills, charted at number 17. The lineup of Franklin, Williams, Street, Tyson, Edwards proved to be short-lived. The 5 performed in Motown 25 and released a direct-to-video The Temptations live in concert film in Harrah's, Atlantic City. The album "Back to Basics," released later in 1983, was the first album featured Ron Tyson on lead "Sail Away," produced by a returning Norman Whitfield, and featured Ron Tyson's first lead vocal, peaked at number 13 on the U.S. R&B chart. In addition to the then relatively unknown singer-musician Ollie Woodson was featured on the track "Stop the World Right Here, I Want to Get Off." Woodson was a Detroit native who had been potentially candidate to replace Dennis Edwards back in 1977. Meanwhile, Edwards, who also had his share of lead vocals on the Back to Basics album, was again fired in 1984 for missing rehearsals and showing up hungover. He then attempted a second solo career, scoring a hit with the 1984 song "Don't Look Any Further," with duet by Sadia Garrett. At this point, Woodson officially joined the group, taking Edwards' place. Woodson's first lead on a single was 1984's "Treat Her Like a Lady," co-written by himself and Otis Williams, and co-produced by former Earth, Wind& and Fire members Al McKay and Ralph Johnson. The single became the biggest success of on R&B radio since 1975, reaching the number 2 on the R&B charts and just missing the pop top 40 at number 48. The group enjoyed further success with 1985's "Do You Really Love Your Baby," a number 14 R&B hit co-written by soul star Luther Vandross. Okay. In 1986, "Lady Soul," the group's third and final top 10 album hit of the decade. Ali Woodson remained with the Temptations till 1987 when he was fired from consistent lateness. He was replaced by the again returning Dennis Edwards. The group recorded one album during Edwards' third tenure, "Together Again," released in late 1987. The following year, Otis Williams published his autobiography, Temptations, co-written with Patricia Romanowski, chronicling the careers of the group from the Prime's distant days. Let me see. Oh yeah, focusing on the lives of Williams and Mel Franklin. An updated version of the book was published in 2002. Together, they worked on the theme song to the children's educational musical movement series Kids in Motion, created by Greg Steve. Edwards was fired from the group for the third and final time in late 1988, with Woodson rejoining the lineup in 1989. The Temptations released the album Special, which included the soulful single Special and Soul to Soul. On January 18th, 1989, the Temptations were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's what we're talking about. The event honored Edwards, Franklin, Otis Williams, David Ruffin, Eddie Kendricks, now performing as Eddie Kendrick, and possibly Paul Williams. Basically meant, Paul Williams was dead, possibly, so someone had to take the honor for him. Well, I'm assuming it'd be Eddie because Eddie was his friend. The rest of the temps too. Mainly it would have been Eddie if the movie was correct, which I believe the movie was. Let's see. Most of the Temptations' presence and performance showed no ill feelings towards the one another, although Otis Williams reported that Kendrick refused to speak to him during the ceremony. The Temptations ended their induction ceremony with a performance of Paul Williams' signature song "Don't Look Back," dedicated to his memory. At the reunion at the induction ceremony, and much to the chagrin of Otis Williams and Motown, Edwards, Ruffin, and Kendricks made plans to tour and record as Ruffin, Kendricks, and Edwards, former leads of the Temptations. The tour was in fact carried out, but production on the album was canceled when 50-year-old David Ruffin died in Philadelphia after a cocaine overdose on June 1st, 1991. Kendricks was diagnosed with lung cancer soon after. He continued to perform until his death on October 5th, 1992, in his native Birmingham. 1990s, Richard Street missed a performance in 1992 after undergoing emergency surgery to remove kidney stones. Owens Williams, completely unaware of Street's surgery, called him angrily about his absence. Street felt Williams was unsympathetic, and as a result, he left the group in 1993. After 22 years, his replacement was St. Louis native Theo Peoples. In the early 1990s, bass Melvin Franklin began missing performances due to failing health, and Ray Davis, former bass man of Parliament Funkadelics, began touring as a fill-in during 1993. Franklin died after suffering a brain seizure at the age of 52 on February 23rd, 1995, and Davis was named his official replacement. The group subsequently finished production for "Lovers Only," an album of pop standards featuring two tracks recorded with Mel Franklin prior to his death. However, the lineup did not last, as Davis was diagnosed with lung cancer and left shortly after completing the album. Davis died in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and reportedly problems and complications of lung cancer. On the evening of Tuesday, July 5th, 2005, the group continued as a quarter for a short time before recruiting Harry McGillivray, a former member of the Futures, for "Lovers Only." It also lasted country for lead Ollie Austin Wilson. He was released from the group shortly after McGillivay's hiring due to health problems. He suffered two bouts of throat cancer in a short time. He was replaced by a new member, Terry Weeks, who had served as his sub. The Temptations' new lineup consisting of Otis Williams, Ron Tyson, Theo Peoples, and newcomers Harry McGillivray and Terry Weeks toured throughout 1997 and was featured in the halftime show at Super Bowl exit. I think it was like Super Bowl 15, something like that. Okay. And later, in early 1998, which celebrated the fourth anniversary of Motown, later that year, the Temptations released Phoenix Rising, vocally arranged by 1980s producer Narada Meko, Walter Izelis Gamboa, Clapton Richardson, Theo Peoples, and Tony Litson, and Skylar Jett, which became their first million-selling album. It's more than 20 years. The album was anchored by Stay, a single featured the Peoples on lead, including a sample from My Girl, which became a number one hit on the urban adult contemporary charts, and it was released to extremely positive reviews. Peoples was fired from the group before the release of Phoenix Rising because of issues with drug addiction and was placed by baritone Bo Henderson. Henderson lip synced to Peoples' vocals in the Stay music video, and this completed the album features lead vocals on different tracks by Bo Henderson and Peoples. The TV miniseries, also in 1998, 3 months after the release of Phoenix Rising earlier that year, De Passe Entertainment, ran by former Motown Vice President Suzanne De Passe and Hallmark Entertainment producer The Temptations, a 4-hour television miniseries based on Otis Williams' Temptations autobiography. The miniseries was broadcast in two parts on NBC on November 1st and November 2nd, 1998, with the first part covering the group's history from 1958 to 1968, and the second part years from 1968 to 1995. The miniseries was a rating success and was nominated for a 5 Emmy Award and Alan Akersu winning for Best Direction. It was subsequently rerun on VH1's cable television network and released on VHS and DVD. Otis Williams' former wife Joseph Mills, Melvin Franklin's mother Rose Franklin, David Ruffin's family, and Jonah Marie Matthews filed lawsuits against Williams, Motown, DePasse, and DePasse Entertainment Hallmark NBC for a number of charges, including defamation. The lawsuit was considered dead, and the judges ruled in favor of the defendants, and ruling was upheld when the plaintiff appealed in 2001. Williams later claimed that although his book was used as the source material for the film, he did not have a great deal of control over how the material was presented. From 2000 to present, the Temptations were inducted in the Vocal Group Hall of Fame in 1999 and 2001. Their 2000 album, Irresistible, won the group its third Grammy, this one for Best Traditional R&B Vocal Performance. Bo Henderson was fired from the group in 2003, prompting a wrongful termination lawsuit. Now we're about to end it with this legacy and influence. Barry Gordy insisted that all of the acts be equally appealing to both white as well as black audiences, and employed as this creative team helped tailor Motown talent for crossover success. He designed Motown choreographer Charlie Atkins, also with Paul Williams credited trademark Presley's and Temptations on stage. Most famous, the Temptations walk or Temptation strut was adapted from similar moves to flamingos, and the vibrations from those two sources, Atkins and Williams, crafted the resulting signature dance routine. Awesome. Look at other similar independent companies of the period. Motown was not a member of the recording industry of America, preferred to stay independent and headline their own widely varied distribution. That's why it's good to be independent. 2000s, the mom and pop record stores, small radio stations such as hit singles by Motown artists such as Temptations never achieved official gold or platinum RIAA certification after Motown joined the RIAA in 1977. During the 1960s and 70s, a number of soul groups showed significant influences from the Temptations, such as the Tramps, Tavares, Manhattan, the Shy-Lights, Parliaments, the Dramatics, the Dales, the Spinners, the Soft Tones, the Soft Ones, the Phonics, Daryl Hall and John Oates, and Motown label makes the Miracles, Four Tops, the Monitors, Gladys Knight and the Pips, the Originals, the Jackson Fives, and the Undisputed Truth. The Temptation songs have been covered by scores of musicians, from R&B singers such as Otis Reddington, My Girl, Bobby Womack, I Wish It Would Rain, and Luther Vandross, Since I Lost My Baby. I remember that, Luther Vandross one. To white soul and reggae bands such as Rare Earth, Get Ready, UB40, The Way You Do the Things You Do, and Rolling Stones, My Girl, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, Just My Imagination, and Mick Jagger's collaboration with reggae artist Pete Toss on Don't Look Back, Funk Brothers, Motown Records, My Girls, Runaway Child, From the Wild, and Papa was a Rolling Stone. Howlin' Oates performed My Girl, The Way You Do the Things You Do, and live with Ruffin and Kendricks. Marcus Miller covered Papa was a Rolling Stones. British rock singer Rod Stewart released the cover I'm Losing You in 1971, and in 1991 collaborated with Temptations on the single Motown song in 2017. Temptations, Oates Williams, then protege Kyle Mack recorded a cover Treat Her Like a Lady for Mack's Shaky Ground EP, which also included two additional Temptations covers. In 2004, Rolling Stone magazine rated Temptations number 67 on a list of 100 greatest artists of all time. Well, I'm gonna do the filmography last, and I'm gonna end it at that. 1973, Save the Children. 1987, Happy New Year. 1989, Who's Harry Crumb. 2007, Walk Card, The Dewey Cox Story. You gotta check that movie out. That movie was funny. All right, I gave you the origins and the history of our legends, the Temptations. Without them would have been the Usher, Michael Jackson, James Brown, Neo, Chris Brown, Mindless Behavior, B2K, B5, and all them. Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, wouldn't have been none of that without them. So come like, share, and subscribe, share my content. Let's get me the 100 subscribers. No, let's get me 1,000 subscribers. I'm out. Stingray Cool is in the building. Team No Sugarcoating. No, we don't sugarcoat nothing. We tell the truth. Peace out and God bless.